You've definitely heard about diss tracks in rap. It was Tupac against Notorious B.I.G., Nas against Jay-Z, and vice versa. Or even more recently, Kendrick against Drake, Drake against Kendrick, and Not Like Us. But what if I told you that the biggest diss in history, I think, didn't come from a rapper, but from a pop singer? And even worse, against her own husband, and few people talk about it from this point of view.
You ain't married to no average boy. Bad motherfucker. God complex. Made sure I call me Malcolm X.
And this is the story of the day Beyoncé exposed Jay-Z to the world on the most personal and destructive album of her career. You might even think I'm exaggerating, but hear me out on this theory, because after this, I'm sure you'll change your mind. But first, what's up, Action Crew? Check it out if you're not subscribed to this channel yet. Man, now's the time. Subscribe, leave a like before the video starts, and turn on notifications too. The link to the t-shirt store is in the description. Let's go, because we need to travel back in time just a little, just a few years ago, so you can understand the whole context of Lemonade and why I think, man, Beyoncé went hard. In the 2000s, it was kind of hard for us to figure out if Beyoncé and Jay-Z were a couple, even though everything hinted that they were together. Even though they appeared together in public from time to time and did some really successful collaborations together, like the song Crazy in Love, PGRADE, I think that until 2008, when they got married and the photos became public, nothing was really confirmed that they were definitely a couple, you know? But starting in the 2010s, the story starts to change, and now, as an openly acknowledged couple, they kind of become a power couple, you know? Like the most powerful couple in pop and rap music. While Jay-Z was becoming a legend in rap, Beyoncé was paving the way for herself to become a diva. And in the process, they did other successful collaborations together, like the song Drunk in Love from the self-titled album, right? From Beyoncé's self-titled album in 2013. But Jay-Z's impact on Beyoncé's career, not even her personal life, just her career, went even further, you know? Because around 2011, more or less, Beyoncé fired her father, Matthew Knowles, who was kind of responsible for managing her career. Since she was a child, through the Destiny's Child phase, up through her first and second major peaks in the 2000s, more or less. So Matthew Knowles leaves and Jay-Z comes in as kind of the manager of his wife's career. And that makes the image of the industry's superpower couple even stronger, completely untouchable and with no controversies on their record. Until the infamous elevator day. During the 2014 Met Gala, some videos leaked of Solange Knowles, Beyoncé's younger sister, beating up on Jay-Z inside the elevator. While Julius, Beyoncé's bodyguard, was trying to hold Solange back, Beyoncé just stood there watching her sister really go at her husband. That was the first leak, right? The first real-life leak about Beyoncé and Jay-Z. And then the world realized that the King of Brooklyn had made a mistake that we never found out what it was, except for the statement they released at the time, saying they were family, they loved each other, and everything had been resolved. The theory that was really popular at the time and that the public strongly believed was that Jay-Z had cheated on Beyoncé and that Solange found out about it in that elevator and lost it right there on the spot. And that silence from Beyoncé in the elevator, just standing completely still, said much more than any statement the family would release later on. However, some small, I'm talking really small crumbs were left along the way so the puzzle could be pieced together later on. That's because in that same year, 2014, Beyoncé and Jay-Z were on a joint tour called On the Run 1. In the song Resentment, which I believe was released in 2006 if I'm not mistaken, right? And she was already talking about betrayal, and Beyoncé changed the lyrics a bit to make it more personal. In the original lyrics, she said something like, "I've been with you for 6 years." But in the lyrics she used in Resentment from On the Run 2, she said, "I've been with you for 12 years, and at that time, 12 years was about right." The period when Beyoncé and Jay-Z were actually together as a couple. Then I remember the whole thing that happened at the time, you know, among Beyoncé and Jay-Z's fan base. And a lot of fans raised a red flag saying that it wasn't just song lyrics, it could maybe be her way of venting. I have to give a disclaimer here because, man, throughout Beyoncé and Jay-Z's journey as a couple, people were always saying that Jay-Z cheated on Beyoncé and all that stuff. A lot of times that was just fan fiction, you know, but even though Beyoncé doesn't really give many spoilers about her future projects, right? In that era, before Lemonade, she dropped a teaser that left everyone scratching their heads, right? It was that photo she posted on Instagram in 2015 smelling a lemon. At the time, nobody understood anything, but people would get it later, and just a few months after that photo, the pieces finally started to fit together. In January 2016, when nobody remembered anything anymore, Beyoncé released a song called Formation. I remember Formation because she released the song, I think it was on a Saturday, on Friday or Saturday. And on Sunday, it was the Super Bowl where Coldplay was going to perform. And there were already rumors that Beyoncé and Bruno Mars were going to make a special appearance. It turned out that yes, they did make that appearance. Beyoncé sang Formation there. But the talk going around at that time was that Beyoncé's next work would talk about the topics from Formation. In other words, police brutality, racial issues, the experiences of black women, a lot of those things, which theoretically was confirmed. Because during the halftime of that Super Bowl, Beyoncé herself announced the Formation World Tour. World in a lot of quotation marks. You know what I'm talking about? Which actually people started to understand. They said, okay, so the next album is going to be called Formation. And it should be, yes, a love letter to black culture. Even the HBO trailer aired. In the trailer for this video, the aesthetic changed completely. It was all very gothic, very dark, very introspective. It didn't have much to do with the dance atmosphere that Formation brought some time before. In the music video, there were some really quick images, right? But what caught the attention was the phrase she whispered at the end of the video, right? Which was, "What are you doing, my love?" And then bam, Lemonade appeared really big like that. And then like a world premiere, like a world debut. I don't know, I think it was April 23rd, something like that. People already knew she would release a movie and the new songs would likely be in it, so everyone guessed correctly. Now, the content of the movie, I personally think that's where the theory of it being just a love letter to black culture fell apart. Most people already knew it would be some kind of expose by Beyoncé about something that happened. But in my mind, I don't think anyone remembered rumors of cheating, gossip about cheating, I don't know. Then, on the day the movie aired, I think in the first few seconds, people understood that it wasn't about foreign policy that Beyoncé was going to talk about. In this thing called Lemonade, right? Actually, she was going to talk about a war and an internal war. And it wasn't in the United States, it was a war inside her own home. And then the theory was over, the rumor was over, it was a fact. Jay-Z cheated on Beyoncé and she was going to tell everyone about it in a movie on HBO. But let's take it step by step, guys. The movie wasn't just musical, it was kind of like a dossier. Beyoncé divided the album into chapters like intuition, denial, anger, apathy, and emptiness. The first chapter, called Intuition, kind of speaks for itself. It showed Beyoncé suspecting that something was wrong, but she wasn't 100% sure. She thought it might just be voices in her head, and it's in this chapter that the first song of the album appears. The song Pray You Catch Me, which I usually call the silent paranoia. It's heavy because she starts this track saying that she's praying for Jay-Z to catch her snooping through his phone before she herself finds out something more. And this is like the ultimate vulnerability of the woman who had until then been the most powerful woman in music, and she exposes herself like that. Anyone who follows Beyoncé knows she dislikes exposure, so for her to do this,
Paranoia. Pray you catch me.
then comes the song Hold Up, which I usually call the awakening of madness. I told you about the elevator video where Beyoncé stood still without moving a muscle, right? Man, in Hold Up, it's already completely different, at least in the music video, right? She shows up with a baseball bat that says Salsi, and she's smashing everything in the city, breaking the car, breaking the fire hydrant. People are cheering because she's breaking things. It's kind of like Spun, you know? Like, you finally did the biggest thing, man, damn, right? And she's walking around smiling and breaking things while a bunch of stuff explodes, including light poles. And the message to me was clear. She was kind of saying, man, I know what you did, but from now on, I'm not going to stay silent just to protect your image anymore.
Hold up, they don't love you like I love you. Slow. In the first
Chapter Intuition could be voices in Beyoncé's head, now that she already knows the situation is real. Then comes the second chapter, which is Denial, where she lets a lot of anger out, so she decides she won't be the silent wife the world expected her to be anymore. And it's also in this section that this literally comes in, and the heavy rock comes into play, already hinting at a possible Act 3 in the future, who knows? Well, Then comes song number 3 called Don't Hurt Yourself. It's a collaboration with Jack White from the White Stripes. For me, it's the best song on Lemonade, and without a doubt, man. It's the heaviest song on this album because here Beyoncé is completely unfiltered. She really speaks her mind. She curses a lot. Man, like when I listened to this song for the first time, I remember that I watched it in the movie, right? First, I remember the foreigners commenting like, wow, what's going on? Beyoncé cheated on Jay-Z. The feelings she was having in the movie were the same ones the audience was having while watching, you know? So like I said, man, what is this song? What did she do, man? What's going on here? Don't Hurt Yourself is visceral rock with a Led Zeppelin sample and a speech by Malcolm X. And this is where she stops whispering and literally starts screaming and doing some things that, man, like I had never seen Beyoncé do before. Honestly, she says some really heavy stuff. So Kayo, get the bleep ready. Because I'm gonna need to comment on some of these things because, yeah, she says like, who the hell do you think I am? No, you're not married to just any damn woman. Then there are several parts where she says that he thinks he's God and all that while she's going to bounce on the next dick. Beyoncé repeats several times that if Jay-Z cheats on her, he's cheating on himself. She even says if she wants to leave, she will because she doesn't need your money. She has her own. And for those who follow Jay-Z, they know this is something that probably hits his ego a bit, and I think he's mentioned this a few times in some interviews. The fact that he's a billionaire provider, let's put it that way, is something that makes him proud. So, man, his own wife saying like, I don't need your money, just leave, go away, go find someone else, I have my own. And the song even ends with a line that's pretty iconic too, right? When she looks at the camera and says, if you try that again, you're going to lose your wife. And like then I stopped to think that the title Denial sounds ironic to me. Not in the sense that she's just denying everything that's happening inside her, but she's also denying Jay-Z and other people who expected him to cheat on her the pleasure of seeing her cry. She's not going to play the victim, you know? She's going to like move on, move forward with a lot of fury. She's not going to play the role of the humiliated wife. Then we as men ask ourselves, how does a guy survive after being exposed like that? And look, we're only on track 3, huh? And then in the anger chapter, she kind of chooses sarcasm now to deal with this cheating situation, you know? And for that, she simply chooses to mock him publicly, you know? Not just mocking him to his face, but public mockery. And it's from here that some of the biggest memes and mysteries of the Lemonade era are born. And it comes with track number 4, the song Sorry, which I usually call the anthem of letting go. This, for me, is also one of the other diss tracks from this diss album that became legendary because she really chooses to crap on Jay-Z to be able to talk about what she was feeling at that moment. She mentions the fact that she's not sorry, right? In that I ain't sorry that she says. And at the same time, she also says that now she wants to live her life. For example, going out with her friends, having fun, and leaving Jay-Z behind, letting him really know that she's having a good time. She also mentions a few times when the guy tries to call her and she just rejects his calls. Besides that classic line, right? She says she regrets that he put a ring on her finger, making a direct reference to the whole single ladies thing and their marriage back in 2008. And then the song ends with that grand finale, right? Like she says, instead of you calling me, you'd better call Becky with the good hair. All right. Who was Becky with the good hair? At the end of the video, I'll talk a little about that too. And then comes the 6th track, right? The song 6 Inch, which features The Weeknd, where she talks about kind of the power of the hustle. In other words, she might have a lot of money, but she's going to keep working hard so she'll never have to depend on her husband, right? She even mentions this in Sorry as well, right? In Sorry, yeah, in Sorry, she mentions that she and her daughter are going to be fine. But 6 Inch to me sounds like a kind of reclaiming of power. In other words, she's a big star even without Jay-Z by her side. It's the classic, I was already a money-making machine before you, my spouse, showed up, and I'm still running everything with or without you, with or without.
She works for the money.
The 6th song is also one of my favorites, and the song Daddy Lessons, which I also like to call Inherited Trauma. With a very country vibe, kind of cinematic, kind of like a Western movie, Beyoncé delivers the message there, which is ironic, right? Let's put it this way. When she fired her father back then, It leaked to the press at the time that Beyoncé's father had cheated on her mother and even had a child. I think that was the story. And that was also one of the reasons, right, for Beyoncé to fire him from his role as her career manager. But here Beyoncé put Jay-Z in her father's place, and Jay-Z did the same thing to the singer. And for me, this song is one of the most brilliant because besides mixing country with New Orleans jazz, the song kind of turns into a psychological analysis. There's a part where Beyoncé sings that her father once told her that if she found men like him, she'd be better off kicking them out. Better yet, shooting. And then, by comparing Jay-Z with Matthew, she kind of puts the rapper in the role of the villain, but as a villain repeating the same pattern for the same reason her family was destroyed before. But this time, she was going to do things differently. Kind of make the guy run away with the shots she was going to fire, but the story of trauma wouldn't repeat with her daughter.
With his gun and his head held high, he told me not to cry.
And then there are two calmer chapters, right? If before Beyoncé was smashing everything with baseball bats, rock guitars, and Wild West shootouts, now everything gives way to a calmer vibe and a much more reflective mood. Here, the adrenaline drops and what we see is the raw pain of a woman who realized her castle has crumbled. And then comes track 7, Love Drought, which the name already says it all and you don't even need much context or explanation. She talks about the desert, right? The desert that love became for her, the desert that her relationship turned into. Right? And here the sarcasm goes away and reflection comes in, and this is where the iconic phrase appears when she says 10 times out of 9 I know you're lying, but 9 times out of 10 I know you're trying to fix it. And for me, this now becomes more of a psychological diss. The song kind of makes it clear to us that even with all the money, they can't rebuild the relationship connection as husband and wife that Beyoncé and Jay-Z had. And just as importantly, they can't make it rain anymore, meaning their relationship wasn't prospering or moving forward. Then comes the 8th song, Sandcastles, right? Sandcastles, which I think is the rawest song on this album. In fact, technically speaking, I would even say that this song had very little mixing or mastering just to capture Beyoncé's real emotion. Because if you really listen to this song, you can see that several times Beyoncé is pouring her soul into it, but her voice cracks. It sounds like she wants to cry. I'm talking about the way the song was recorded, so later you should stop and listen and try to pay attention to this detail. She really focuses on the fact that she made a promise. Beyoncé was probably referring to the promise she made during her wedding, but promises don't work that way for her. Besides admitting that despite everything Jay-Z did, she still loves him. For viewers of the Lemonade film that day, by that moment, they already believed Jay-Z had cheated on Beyoncé, she'd kicked him out, and she was about to announce their separation. It was shocking because it's at this moment that Jay-Z simply appears in the video, and the biggest detail is that he kind of humiliates himself, let's put it that way. Man, because we would never expect to see the king of Brooklyn, the rap billionaire, kneeling at his wife's feet and apologizing, asking for forgiveness. So I thought it was very brave of Jay-Z, who for years created this persona, which is also a part of him. But man, the guy showed up crying, regretful, kneeling. Damn, those scenes are intense.
Every promise.
And then on track 9 comes the song Forward. Right? Move Forward, which is a collaboration between Beyoncé and James Blake. Actually, it's not really a collaboration. James Blake sings the song alone. And visually, it's one of the heaviest parts of Lemonade. This is the moment of decision. Either they try to rebuild the relationship from the ashes or they separate for good. But in short, you have to move forward. And this part is important. I know a lot of people skip this song, a lot of people skip it, but in Lemonade, this part is important because that validates theories about Black cultural issues. And what about the Black political topics Beyoncé was expected to address in this album, which everyone was already speculating about? Because it's here that Beyoncé shows the mothers of the movement, right? The mothers of Trayvon Martin, Michael Brown, and Eric Garner appear, and their sons were young Black men killed by the police in the United States, and they appear holding photos of their sons. In my opinion, Beyoncé does something brilliant here because she shifts the focus from mourning over being cheated on to real mourning over the loss of someone. She shows that while she was suffering from the loss of her marriage, many other women were suffering real and irreparable losses, while hers could actually be repaired. This fact makes Jay-Z's mistake seem minor, but it also throws it in his face that there are real problems out there.
Times 5 forward.
Then the 10th track begins, which is the song Freedom, a collaboration between Beyoncé and Kendrick Lamar. Here, Beyoncé sings about regaining her strength, breaking the chains, and not letting anything hold her back. I usually call this track an anthem of authority because there's a part where she sings, "I'm running water and you can't stop me." In other words, it's the world trying to tell a force of nature like Beyoncé what she should do in the face of separation and betrayal. The guys know, and it's in this part that people understand why. Because the name of the album is Lemonade, because there's audio from Jay-Z's grandmother, right? Saying that life gave her lemons, but she made lemonade out of them.
I was served lemons, but I made lemonade.
Then the last track starts, which is track 11 called All Night, which I usually call the Irreparable Redemption. Porém, nos termos da Beyoncé. The song sounds like the conclusion of a love story that's kind of a celebration of victory. I'm really happy to know that the people on TikTok saved this song from being forgotten since 2016 and are making mashups with Tyrant, I think, which is one of her more recent songs. And man, that song back then already deserved that exposure because in my opinion too, it's also one of Beyoncé's best songs. I'll say this several times in the video I make about Beyoncé. All Night anticipates the third act of what's called the Betrayal Trilogy. I'll talk about it in a second, in which she says that love conquers all. Love is the hero. Everything is about love. In my opinion, man, she kind of says that she decided to forgive Jay-Z, but now Jay-Z is just a supporting character in her story. Let me explain it to you. In the music video, we see real people celebrating love, but it also alternates with home videos of Beyoncé, Jay-Z, and their family, you know? Yeah, up until then it was just Blue Brook, that's who she had at the time, and then it shows Jay-Z being like a great husband and dad, in other words, just a regular guy. Well, I think you guys saw both parts of my Jay-Z video, and you can see that throughout his whole career, he built this image of a powerful rapper, a billionaire, a dangerous guy who came from Brooklyn. But by showing this image of a family man, a man who made a mistake and was at his wife's mercy, you know, so that, I don't know, his life could move forward. So when it comes to relationships, I think it says a lot and kind of shows how Beyoncé won the narrative war in Lemonade. And then comes the 12th track, right? Which appeared as the bonus track, but we already knew it was Formation, but within the album's narrative. A lot of people might think it has nothing to do with it, but it actually does. Besides reinforcing the issue that was brought up in Forward about Black cultural identity, she also talks about the relationship issue. So, at the time, I think nobody understood a part where she says, like, if he behaves, I'll take him to Red Lobster, and if he stays cool, I'll take him to buy some sneakers, and if he keeps it chill, I'll also give him a ride on my jet, stuff like that, you know? I'm paraphrasing here, but I think this reinforces the idea that Beyoncé was saying, like, man, I'm the boss, actually. I do have a voice in my relationship. And just as importantly, she also kind of hints that that jet she brings here to Salvador, it's hers, not his, okay? And that's how Lemonade ended in that April of 2016. But as soon as the movie ended, a witch hunt started on the internet because everyone wanted to know who Becky with the good hair was. The internet turned into the FBI, and this Becky literally became that other woman, right? The one Jay-Z cheated on Beyoncé with. The designer, Rachel Roy, posted a photo on Instagram with the caption, "Good hair, don't care," after the release of Lemonade. If you have good hair, you don't care, something like that. However, the Bayhive, you know, Beyoncé's fans, flooded the woman's Instagram with lemons and bees. Even the singer Rita Ora herself, she was targeted by the speculation that she was the Becky with the good hair because she had posted a photo, I think in a bikini with a lemon and a J, you know? With a J, right? And then everyone started saying, hey, look, Becky is Rita Ora. Besides, of course, the whole world started talking about how smart Beyoncé was for turning that bad situation into millions of dollars and worldwide acclaim. Just so you have an idea, Beyoncé was so bold that she released this song instead of putting it on Spotify. At the time, she put it on Tidal, which was Jay-Z's own platform, forcing the whole world to give money to her own husband who cheated just to hear her cursing him out on the album. Look, that's pure business. Well, that's for those who listened on Tidal, right? Those who didn't listen.
You are a pirate.
But the following year, Jay-Z responded. In 2017, he released 444. That title is a reference to the time Jay-Z woke up to write that track when his mind was filled with these thoughts and regrets about the cheating. And there are even parts in one of the songs where he says he almost threw everything away, his whole family that he was so attached to, all because of someone he didn't even know. Well, unlike, say, a typical rap diss like we've seen with Kendrick and Drake, for example, Jay-Z here, in this case, instead of just making a track at a time, he also had to make an album. Let's put it this way, so he could properly ask Beyoncé for forgiveness and make the whole world understand his side of the story and how wrong he was, okay? As if Jay-Z needed that, right? And to wrap up the Betrayal trilogy, as I usually call it, in 2018, they went on the On the Run 2 tour, which was their second joint tour. And at a certain show, at the end of that show, they announced that there was an album besides showing the Ape Shit music video, and that they were releasing this album. Together, they would also create as if they were a third act, which would be called The Carters, and that album was called Everything Is Love, meaning now everything is love. And the message from The Carters in Everything Is Love was, we survived and now we take power through love.
Haters in danger. Whole lot of gangin'. 35 chains.
Lemonade had such a strong impact that I believe it inspired Beyoncé's 3 acts, giving her the confidence to create songs in various styles. She kind of did a house style, right? A more danceable song with the song Sorry. Then came Act 1, which was Renaissance. Then she made the song Daddy Lessons, which was country, and there was that incident at the CMA Awards where the country crowd didn't want Beyoncé to go there and sing that song, which led to Cowboy Carter, Act 2, and also the song Don't Hurt Yourself, which is heavy rock. Which makes us think that probably the third act, which might come out this year, will be a rock and roll act. After Lemonade, Beyoncé moved beyond being labeled just the pop singer of single ladies and dance music, a label I always disliked, to be honest. Man, Beyoncé always had so much more to show than just what the general public knows, just the party hits, and then she basically became a curator of her own story and also, man, a curator of Black history. Man, that changes everything whenever she releases any song with a racial theme. Awesome! Recently, the world stopped to watch the 2025 Super Bowl where Kendrick Lamar performed Not Like Us, dissing Drake in front of millions of viewers around the world. But let's be honest, Beyoncé did that a little before, you know? Think about it. In every show of the Renaissance Tour, there's at least one or even more songs from Lemonade. At Coachella, in her highly anticipated return after giving birth to twins, which was also one of the most watched events at the time, she sang several songs, including Don't Hurt Yourself, which was one of the highlights of that performance. And I think that the whole tour, every show, if Beyoncé actually sings at the World Cup, like people were saying, man, she'll probably perform some song from Lemonade, but I don't know either. In other words, Beyoncé will always be calling out Jay-Z, while Kendrick called out Drake once, like for the whole world to see, and today he probably doesn't even want to talk about it anymore. Beyoncé will always be putting Jay-Z on blast, putting on blast in quotes, right, with the songs from Lemonade. Meanwhile, Jay-Z will always be in the front row giving his wife a standing ovation. I don't even need to mention that the domestic dispute between husband and wife is among the most acclaimed albums ever. I'm not exaggerating, you can Google the best albums of this decade. Did it lose Album of the Year? Yes, it did, but that doesn't take away from the impact that Lemonade still has today. It's going to be 10 years old this month. In the end, Lemonade proved that in the power game, Beyoncé's silence in the elevator was the loudest noise of the 2010s. She didn't need gossip, she needed art. And Jay-Z, well, I think he learned the most valuable lesson of all, which in my opinion is never underestimate a woman who knows how to make lemonade out of the lemons life gives her. Or else never marry one of the biggest pop stars on the planet. But I wanted to hear from you guys. Does Jay-Z still owe Beyoncé more apologies after 444? If this video gets good views, I'll do Jay-Z's perspective on 444 too. And if you want more content, click here on the audio options and you'll go to Klingon and hear me talking more about Lemonade and about this era. Because other than that, I'm wrapping up here. Big hug from Gerson Saldanha. See you in our next video and thanks.